flying, but ISIS sympathizers are praising the attack. President Barack Obama ordering flags flown and has staff at sea.
My nephew was here, but his friend, well, she, as I say, she was here, and she comes here a lot, so he knows her very well for 10 years. And we went by the house, but no answer, nothing.
Right in behind that is the main trauma center for the entire city, the entire region. That's why people were being carried off in police cars, ambulances, on foot, any way they could. And, you know, it's all a bit surreal. This street, 24 hours ago, I arrived here on another assignment, drove down here, looked at Pulse, that nightclub, as I drove past, glanced at it, saw people around and time, continued on to my hotel.
So what I was saying is a practice called Takia, and it's a practice in Islam, and the practice is deceit. That's why when they tell you that Islam is a religion of peace, they're telling you the truth. But what we don't understand is that what peace in Islam means when all the kafirs have submitted to Islam. Because the word Quran actually is recitation, and the Islam is submission. And to be a Muslim means to submit to Islam, which is to be a slave of Allah. And until all the world, we're kafirs. You, me, you, we're all kafirs. You're either a Muslim or you're a kafir. And until you submit to Allah, then they can do whatever they want to you. And so what these guys do is they lie to your face because the example is in Muhammad. Muhammad teaches that.
Yes, he did.
See, what people don't understand about the Quran is you can't read the Quran and be a Muslim. There's no way. Because in order to be a Muslim, in order to be a perfect Muslim, you have to imitate the life of the Prophet Muhammad. And how do you know about the life of the Prophet Muhammad is the Sirah and the Hadith. So unless you read the Sirah, the Hadith, and the Quran, the Quran will never make sense to you. Because what people don't realize is the Quran is actually arranged. Uthman, who was a caliph right after Muhammad died, he took over and he took and burned every copy of the Quran that was in existence and created one Quran. And that Quran itself was arranged in the longest chapter to the shortest chapter. And that's done on purpose. So when you pick up the Quran, you can't read it. You can't make sense out of it. There's no timeline or anything. But if you take the Quran and you look at the Hadith and the life of Muhammad and you put it all together, then you can understand. And what they're doing, this is not radical Islam. There's no such thing. Radical Islam is a term that was made up by Americans and by apologists for Islam that are called demis. So, and they're demis. And so what this is jihad. You need to quit using terms like political Islam and use a term like jihad, because this is what it is. They're practicing jihad. That's all it is. Anybody who does something like this is imitating the life of Muhammad, which is exactly what it means to be a perfect Muslim.
Okay, out of the conversation, define the word jihad.
Well, they say
someone's going to listen to what is true meaning.
What they say, jihad is struggle, and one of the things you have is a struggle. And so one of the things you have to understand about that is that the Quran itself was written in Arabic. This interesting thing is that it was the first book that was ever written in Arabic was the Quran. And actually, I think it was the Syrian Christians that gave them the alphabet to begin with. But the Quran was written in the form of Arabic that uses all consonants, so there's no vowels. So when you look at the Quran and you read it, sometimes words can mean other things. And so the word jihad has been translated in a couple ways, and one way is struggle. It's a struggle, and that's what the apologists for Islam will tell you. Now they refer to it also as a holy war. But to really understand jihad, you have to understand the life of Muhammad. But basically, if you look at the Quran and you look at all the verses that talk about jihad, you'll find that there are a couple of verses that talk about an inner struggle, right? But 98% of the other verses that talk about jihad are all about violence, about killing the kafirs, cutting their heads off. The people of the book, the Christians, the Jews, they're not specific on that. They'll kill anybody. Hindus, Buddhists,
the Quran
Muslims.
only had two paths guaranteed for heaven. One is to spread Islam One is to spread Islam to non-Islamic countries, and the other was to have a jihad. Those are the only two guaranteed
I didn't hear the
ways.
last word.
Is to have a jihad.
Jihad,
Actually,
okay.
yeah, and so those are only two guaranteed ways.
And what people don't understand also is there was a big trial called the Holy Land Trial. And in the Holy Land Trial, they uncovered many documents and they proved that the Muslim Brotherhood is behind Hamas and Hezbollah and all these groups for years. This has been the Muslim Brotherhood. They have a document that was produced that gives a specific detail of how they're going to take over the United States. And that in that part of that detail, what you got to understand is all Muslims, if they're a practicing Muslim, they practice jihad. But jihad manifests itself in many different ways. So cutting somebody's head off is jihad, but also the Muslims have to give to charity. Muslim charity, it's one of the 5 pillars of Islam. What's that?
That's part of the struggle.
Right. And so what they do is when they give to a Muslim charity, that money, they don't give to the Red Cross or just a normal charity. They give to a Muslim charity. That money is funneled through Hamas and Hezbollah to the Muslim Brotherhood, which finances jihad.
But they'll say the other side, they give it the Red Crescent, so you could do that. I mean, they have their account.
But the
with
thing,
Red
but the
Cross.
thing is what they're doing is they're taking that money and they're coming into our schools and they're teaching a form of Islam and a truth about Muhammad that's not true. They're bringing people into positions of power that are apologists for Islam. So there's many ways to commit jihad. It's not only killing somebody.
But you know,
It's
if I were really, if you don't know Islam, the simplest way I think to really understand it from here is just to go back and look at the example. Just take the hadiths, and you know it's really funny. Whether you're Muslim, you look at Christianity, you look at Hindu, you look at even Judaism. Islam, for their defense, is the only religion where the Prophet's day-to-day habits, including what he ate, when he went to the bathroom, who he was with, and what he did throughout the day, is journalized. That's the only religion where the Prophet did that level of detail.
But you have to understand something.
I want to make my word
go ahead.
and that is, all you have to do if you really want to understand the real impact is look at what he did on the day-to-day life.
Yeah.
When they had the fights, when people that he interacted with that were against him, when they killed 1,014 people without guns, without bombs, but with
Swords.
swords,
Yeah.
which is a very personal way to get you. If you can kill 1,014 people, that says a lot about your prophet. And when your prophet and his staff take these people, and they have girls and they have wives, and then the prophet says, let me have my time with this one before I sell her to this one. And it's chronologized,
Yeah.
it's diarized in a
Right.
diary. If that is a prophet that you follow, that says a lot. You
Well,
may may believe in the same God, because I mean we all talk that through all religions. I believe in the same God, but the way you get there through that prophet was a very violent
Well, I
and
wanna-
sexually exploitive.
Yeah, I don't disagree with what you said, but what I want to say is that you have to understand that it's not really a religion. If you talk to many Muslims, you'll find out that they all agree that it's a total way of life. It's a political system. It's religious, military, and political. And the truth is that and the other thing that they don't understand is when Muhammad, for 20 years, he tried to convert people in Mecca. And in 20 years, he only converted like 100 or 110 or 115 people. I forgot, a very small number. But when he left Mecca and went to Medina and began to be a political leader and then started
A
wars
warrior.
and began to kill people, he ran the first tribe of Jews out, the second, the third tribe of Jews, he cut all their heads off, 800
Remember, because they
of them.
had enough, because they said, you know what, you're now turning into a profit center, a political force, and actually kind of like a little bit of a thug, and being kind of a mafioso running the trades. We're going to not tolerate this, and we're going to stand up to you.
So if you want an acronym to remember it, RPM. Everybody knows what RPMs is. It's religious, political, and military.
Yeah.
We have to stop calling Islam a religion because typically it has some aspects of religion in it, but it's a political system that will implement Sharia law in everybody's life, in every world, in every country until the end of
I
the
would
world.
say if you really are a devout Muslim, you will have to follow Sharia law. You have by violence. But I would say, you know what's interesting too is I still call it religion because like me, if you're raised Christian, you may not really know your belief fully. So many people, and I would say the vast majority of the 2 billion folks that follow it, don't know the fundamentals.
Well, that's true, but
the
the danger you're going to run into is we have religious freedom in this country, and I'm all for that. And I believe if you want to practice whatever religion, that's great. But it's not a religion; it's a political system, and that's different. And that's why
our religious freedom is based on Judeo-social values. They do not adhere to that.
Absolutely.
In fact, they're against it.
Well, they say that the Constitution is garbage and that they should destroy it and replace it with Sharia law, and that's what they're doing right now. I don't know if you know about the Dearborn, Michigan.
I do.
You know, in
I'm aware of Dearborn,
and
have a full population there.
Right, and did you hear about the church? I don't remember if it was Catholic, but they rang the bell.
Okay.
So they have to call to prayer 5 times a day. So in that town, they were ringing a bell at a Christian church, and if you've ever read the Quran, it says that the bell's from Satan, which is Satan. So the bells are from Satan, right? So they couldn't have a Christian bell interrupting that. So they went to the council and they had the bell stop. So they have that much power in that town that they have the bell stop. And people don't know this, but when they invaded all these Christian nations before the Crusades ever started, when Islam was going through that part of the country and destroying all the Christian churches, they were tearing down all the bells, melting the bells together, and they made one of the biggest cannons that ever existed to shoot at Christians and Jews
using the metal
from their bells.
Wow.
When they went into Constantinople, which was like 900 something year thousand before the first crusade actually started, they destroyed the biggest church in Constantinople, Hagia Sophia. They destroyed it and they built a mosque right there. And then they changed, on top of it. And then they changed the name from Constantinople to Istanbul. There's a song, an old song about it. If you ever read it.
What about the Temple Mount?
Same thing, Temple Mount.
It's a crazy.
So what you have to understand is whenever you see like interfaith documents, you'll always see the church and the Jewish synagogue and the mosque is always taller. It has to be the tallest building in town. Our problem is we're ignorant of the truth. They have murdered.
I think it's part of being ignorant and also about being really openly tolerant.
We haven't been taught in
Actually,
school.
the media here is one of the worst enablers.
But the Islamic faith and Muhammad and the followers of Muhammad are responsible for the death and murder of over 270 million people in 1,400 years. 270 million. 110 million Africans, 60 million Jews, 40 million Hindus.
All that sounds so fantastical, but I want to say, just look at us in the last 7
Make
years.
the Nazis
No,
like
but
Boy Scouts.
look at
They
us.
do.
But look
They
at us
make
in the
the
last 7 to 8 years.
That's-
You and I have been of age
7 to 8
of the
years.
last 7 to 8 years to make a difference.
Right.
And when we see what happens in even Sudan, 500,000-600,000, and it's not just the Arabic killing the dark ones; they're killing the Christian dark ones. So it really is a Christian issue here. And we just sit back so quietly. That to me is a shocking thing. We did that in our lifetime with this very modern press. That says a lot.
Well, it's amazing. Well, multiculturalism is going to ruin the country. I mean, this idea that we have to accept everybody's viewpoint. We can all have our own beliefs, but you can't start supplanting the Constitution with Sharia law. I don't know if you guys know this, but there was legislation in Florida, and I forgot if it was a law or if they amended the Constitution, but it had been fought for like 4 years. They wanted to tell they were going to implement a law that said that you can never have Sharia law in Florida, and it got knocked down. And then 2 years later, they put it. 2 years ago, it was put into law. So there's actually a law in the books in Florida that says we cannot, you can't be a Muslim and come and demand to be tried in a Sharia court. That's in 22 states. That needs to be in every state in the United States.
Yes, to be a federal law.
Federal law. Because what they do
we have
is
a federal law against marijuana too.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's all how you
Right.
enforce it.
Because what they did in Kansas City was the Muslims in Kansas City they pray 5 times a day.
Right.
And so they have to do ablution, they have to wash. And you hear stories about this, Muslims washing their feet in the sinks. It's gross, right? They're in the thing. So they went into Kansas City to the airport and they said, you need to provide us a place to wash our feet. So in the airport in Kansas City, and I think they have them in Orlando now, they have these little places where you can wash your feet.
I thought it was a urinal.
No, yeah. But anyway, and so listen to this. So that's submission to Sharia law. That is incremental submission to Sharia.
Yeah, that's a tiny one. When I look at how the British and the French have submitted, even in
Right.
the court system, And no offense, they typically lead us by 10 to 20 years.
Yeah.
I think we're a little bit closer. We're going to get closer to that than people.
Yeah, well, he's a great example. The mayor of London is a Muslim.
Yeah, the
and
first
he's
ever
already
elected.
first ever. And did you see the pictures in
Yes.
Europe of all the guys out in the street in London? Oh, death to America! Wait for the real Holocaust. Islam will dominate the world. You didn't see them pictures?
And then, but the,
yeah, you
no.
won't see them on the media.
The media will turn this around saying, but by the way, those are just a few radicals.
Oh, that's not true.
They're what? I'm sorry.
It's just a few radicals. And
Oh,
every
radicals,
group,
yeah,
and
yeah,
every
yeah.
group has them.
Yeah.
Be suppressed for that.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you.
So-
Your book.
Yeah, so you're knowledgeable in all this stuff. So how do you where do you get all this?
Well, I'll tell you what. If you want a quick, you can go on iTunes, and on iTunes there's a guy named Bill Warner, and it's free. If you know, I don't know if you have to pay for iTunes. I think I'm on a 3-month free subscription. But anyway, it's
Bill
called
Warren?
Bill Warner. It's called Political Islam, and he has these lectures, and they go by one thing at a time. Every doctrine of Islam. What the guy did, he's an older PhD, and he took the Quran and put it in a word processor and sorted through it and found the stories, and he created this book actually called A Simple Quran. It's got the Hadith, the Sirah, and the Quran all in one book, and he eliminated all the duplication and put it together so the stories make sense. So that's a good source. There's a couple of guys, William Federer, and he's wrote several books on it. It's really documented history. If one would read history, you could pull it all out yourself. But
Okay,
these guys
thanks.
have put it all
Let
together.
me ask you, what do you think it has to happen for the society to start waking up with it?
Well, this is it. The problem with our society is our ignorance of Islam. That's
So
all.
what are we going to do? We need to get killed another.
No, well, what we need to do is we need to make laws in this country that it's illegal to political. We need to recognize Islam as a political system. We need to go to the council members, the people on the county commissioners, and we need to explain them what Islam is. And then we need to go into the schools and we need to tell them to quit teaching our kids a version of Islam that's not true. Because the CARE, Council of American Islamic Relations in Washington, they're one of the biggest organizations in the country. They have offices on K Street. They lobby the senators and the congressmen. They are the only people under Obama that are allowed to speak to the CIA and the FBI, and they give a false view of Islam. And we've allowed this for years. And so they're entrenched in this country.
What about the training camps, the ISIS training camps that are around the country
Well, see,
now?
this is another thing, right?
that's-
So those training camps that are there, they're under the protection of our laws, right?
Right,
And
exactly.
they're using our laws. They have
Right.
the freedom to buy, they can assemble, they can buy weapons, and that's fine because we don't want to give up our freedom. See, this is what the political elite will tell you. Oh, this is a problem. Now you have to give up all your rights. So we don't want to give up our rights. What we need to do is we need to change the classification of Islam from being a religion to a political system, because we would not allow communism to flourish back then, and we shouldn't allow a political system that's against everything we stand for as a country to flourish. So we have to reclassify it, and that's going to be a big task, I think. So if you ask the average Muslim to explain the Quran to you and explain some of the things they believe, they really can't understand it. And it's kind of like Christianity, right? You have a lot of people in the Christian faith who claim to be Christians, but they're nominal Christians, right? They say, well, I believe in God, and they don't go to church, they don't read the Bible, right?
Yeah.
So listen, there's many Muslims who are great people. We all know the guy down the road. He's a Muslim. We work with him. He's a good guy. And that's just what we get, because in America and the United States, we have this rule, the golden rule that we live by. That we believe people and we trust people. But in Islam, the thing is that they really were just ignorant of the truth of what goes on. So I was talking to this girl the other day, and I asked her, I said, how could I become a Muslim? I'm serious, asking her, trying to see what she knows about the faith. And I said, so what would I do? And she goes, well, you should fast. And I said, really? I should fast? And she said, yeah, you should fast. And I said, well, I could fast and become a Buddhist or a follower of Christ or anybody, right? Like, how would fasting? What does it really take to be a Muslim? And then so she said, well, you would. And I had to press her for this. And she's a young girl, but a person that's going to college, right? So not an unintelligent person. So she says, well, I think the 5 pillars, yeah. I could hardly pull the 5 pillars out of her. She got 3 of the 5, and eventually she was going to Google the 5th one, and then I think she came up with it. The Hajj, right? She couldn't remember the Hajj, the pilgrimage to Mecca, right? So anyway, but it's funny when you talk about that. I asked her, I said, well, how do you know where the 5 pillars are? I go, where can I read about this? And she says, well, in the Quran. And I gave her two tasks to go home. The second one, I said, do you pray 5 times a day? It was funny. She said, well, actually, she goes, and I go, really? So you pray 5 times a day? And she goes, well, actually, if you miss 1 or 2, you can kind of make them up later. And I said, really? And she goes, well, to be honest, sometimes I go home and I pray all 5 of the 5 prayers at the same time,
yeah.
and that's just as good, right?
Right.
And I said, well, let me ask you, why do you pray 5 times a day? And she said, well, because that's what it teaches in the Quran. So I sent her home and I said, okay, I want you to, next time I see you, I want you to find out in the Quran which verses tell you to practice the 5 pillars of Islam and which verse tells you how many times to pray. Well, she says, well, I'll have to ask my mom. And I go, well, don't ask your mom. I said, go get your Quran. And she goes, well, it's in Arabic. And I'm like, come on, you speak English. And she goes, well, I do have an English version of the Quran, right? So she goes, well, the truth is that the 5 pillars of Islam aren't in the Quran. You really can't get that out of the Quran. There's not enough information in the Quran to become a Muslim outside of reading the Sirah and the Hadith. And the other thing, the Quran teaches you're supposed to pray 3 times a day.
Oh, is that what?
But the Hadith says you're supposed to pray 5 times a day. So there's a contradiction. But I just wanted her to go research this and realize for herself that she's telling me she's a Muslim and she doesn't really understand her faith, right? I just find it comical.
So we're ready to say goodbye, but you had a good question here. What can we do? What can we as Americans do to stop all this?
Well, one of the things we can do.
Exactly.
We have our freedoms here in America. We should be entitled to continue our freedoms.
What do we do?
And not start living in fear.
Right.
Right. No, he's absolutely right. What we can do is what we're doing right now. We can have a dialogue. We can educate. See, the real enemy isn't necessarily Islam, but it's our ignorance of Islam. And we need to educate people. We need to get in the school systems. We need to get back in the textbooks. And the other thing is, we're sitting at home staring at the TV, right? Yep. So what we should be doing, how hard would it be to go down to a city council? Look, right there. That's Grayson, right? Yeah. Yep, that's right. And you're probably an apologist for Islam, right? Of course.
You're a tragic figure.
Yeah, no, you're a tragic figure, sir. We fought hard to get you unelected. I can't believe the people of this town elected you again.
What did he say?
He said I'm a tragic figure.
Okay, additional news. It turns out his dad hosted a political TV show in Afghanistan that supported the Taliban. So there's plenty of warning signs.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry about that.
Yeah,
I got a little carried away because we campaigned against that guy when he ran last time, but.